All right. So here we are getting ready for the no asshole rule. Give it a couple minutes because it's starting a little early. And hopefully, I've got it set right. So looks like people should be able to chat, ask questions, stuff like that. Um, yeah. And that's Fezzik behind me. He likes looking outside. Super exciting. I know. Um, so let me start by saying where this class comes from. So a couple years back, I had ended up coming across a copy of the No Asshole Rule: Building a Civilized Workplace and Surviving One That Isn't. It's by Robert Sutton. I've got all this in the handout. If you don't have a copy of the handout, um, give me a shout. It's posted on the North Shield website currently on the discussion page. But if you track me down, my email is Toramassa, Toramassa at gmail.com. I can send you a copy. Um, and I read this and I went, wow, that was really super handy. Unfortunately, I don't have a workplace that's full of assholes, but there are places that do. And I thought, one of the things I've heard a lot about is about how the SCA has issues with assholes sometimes. And so I thought, well, how do we take this whole no asshole rule and apply it to the SCA? Because there's some challenges about applying techniques that are written for a employment world, a business world, and applying them to a non-business, not-for-profit, all volunteer-driven organization. So tell me more about you, or not tell you more about me. Um, get these things in the right order. My name is John Lyon. I am a social worker, trained, been for 10, 12 years now. I've been working with adults with anger issues. I do parenting work, work with kids who've been abused and neglected, do couples work, individual work with anxiety, depression. I've worked with men who've sexually offended against children. I do a lot of trauma work. SCA wise, I am a former Kingdom Seneschal for the Kingdom of North Shield. a Knight of the Society. I've been local and regional essential. I've autocrad lots of events. I've done a whole bunch of stuff in the SCA too. Um, so the goals of the class, what we're trying to accomplish with all of this. I'm going to hold this here instead of over there, so I'm looking more at the camera. Um, the first one is to help people understand who are assholes. How do we recognize who assholes are? Um, recognize the damage that they cause, and the ways that, and some of this is going to be from the book, which is sometimes not super helpful. Some of the strengths that assholes have, and how some organizations use that, and how those can also be detriments, how they can also weaken the organization. I really want to encourage a free flow of ideas. I like having people talk to me. I'm hoping that with this format, people will be able to jump in and start asking questions. And if it doesn't happen, then this will just be me talking, and then people can write comments in the bottom of the YouTube video or online, and we'll see how that goes. And maybe I will do something smart. Share that to Facebook so that people can see that. Okay. Um, so that, and one of the things I hope with this class is that people will see this and they'll be able to start implementing it in their own groups and across the SCA on a larger scale. And ideally to reduce the number of assholes in the SCA. I'm going to be saying that word a lot, so if that word's a problem, heads up, I suppose. So one of the important things that I've had to add to this class is an important disclaimer. And the disclaimer is that this isn't about telling you what to do or who to be. Um, this is like one part book report and one part suggestion. So there's a lot of things about like what I think is probably best, what I've learned, what I've seen, stuff like that. Um, and sometimes people take that right to heart and they go, "Am I being an asshole?" And here's the thing: maybe you are, maybe you're not. If you don't want to look like an asshole, then maybe you want to think about things you're doing and do something other than that. Um, and so this gets to one of the first and really critical things we have to go through, and that is defining what an asshole is. Now, in the book, they refer to temporary and certified assholes, and I add a third category. So, temporary assholes are people having a bad day. You come off the field, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're probably dehydrated, and maybe you drank too much last night, you're hungover, maybe like all kinds of things might be going on. And, someone says, "Hey, are you doing all right?" And you kind of snap at them. And we've all had that days. We've all been temporary assholes now and again. It's just the way it goes. And one of the things that we want to do when we're off, we're at an event and we're talking to someone and they snap at us, we might just kind of back up and go, "Ugh, okay, they must be having a hard time." We don't want to sort of jump to the conclusion that someone's an asshole just because they snapped at us, just because they were rude or mean. Um, so sometimes it's just a misunderstanding too. Um, for a long time, there's a story I've heard told about Duke Rido, and Rido has what has been famously described as an extremely dry sense of humor. Like you pack it up and you put it in electronics to keep them from getting damp, like super, super dry. Um, and someone was hanging out with him and he said something, and this person had been so frustrated with him, just constantly feeling like he was being insulting and rude, just all the time. And he said something, and in that moment, she went, oh my god, he's being funny. And then she started reviewing all of their contacts, and she started realizing, like, "Oh my god, he's been funny this whole time. Oh my god." So, sometimes people come across in a poor or a way that doesn't jive with where we are. Um, so there's a lot of reasons someone might be a temporary asshole, or we might just sort of take it that way. Yes, Fez, hello. Um, Next are certified assholes. Certified assholes are assholes almost all of the time. Um, Part of what when we look at what makes someone a certified asshole is that it's a pattern of behavior. Like, they keep doing things to put other people down. They keep using what we're going to describe as the dirty dozen. They keep using those things to push people down, to make them feel bad, to hurt people. Um, they are often doing this to gain power, to gain focus. They tend to focus their behavior on an individual or a small group. So they try to cut people out so that they're easier to victimize. Like, they do a whole bunch of stuff, and they do it consistently. And the last group that and this is the group I'm adding, are ignorant assholes. And so this is people who engage in those sort of consistent behaviors, but they do it without necessarily that sense of understanding of what they're doing. Um, so their behavior tends to be haphazard in terms of who they're targeting. Um, so they're kind of inconsistent. They're not doing it in the way a temporary asshole does, where when they're feeling better, they don't do that, and they're not targeting a specific individual, but like Bob can really say some hurtful things just out of the blue, and he doesn't target a particular group of people. Like, he doesn't target fencers or weavers or something. He just says rude things every now and again. And sometimes these people do it because they think they're being funny, or they're trying to be funny, and it doesn't come across that way. Um, Sometimes it's because of their background, stuff that they learned. It's not super helpful, sort of regardless of how you look at it. So hopefully that makes sense. So now we're going to talk about the asshole behaviors, the dirty dozen. And these are the things that you want to be looking for when you're going, where is this person? Are they a temporary asshole? Are they a certified asshole? Are they somewhere in between? And the first are personal insults. And so this is examples of this are things like garb snarking. When you go, oh my God, have you seen Joe's such and such? And they're intended to make someone feel bad. Now, sometimes these personal insults are done face to face. So I insult you to your face and I say, awful things to you. Sometimes they're done, I don't like the term behind your back, but they're done to lower other people's opinions about you. So they're done to sort of make you look bad. Invading someone's personal space. So this can be things like standing in a doorway, standing at the entrance to someone's tent, um, getting too close to someone, touching them without permission. Things like that can all be this invasion of personal territory. Now, one of the things when I was writing this class, I asked people, like, can you give me examples of this stuff? And this one came up a lot, especially for non-males, for female folks, because a lot of males kind of don't recognize this pattern of behavior. They just lean against the door and they don't see it as threatening. But for a lot of women, it can come across as very threatening, or threatening. Just gotta say it that way. So for all the guys in the audience, pay attention to that. Make sure you're not looming over someone, Make sure that you're not blocking their route if you can possibly avoid that, because that's creepy behavior, and you don't want to be a creep. So the next one is uninvited physical contact. Putting your hands on someone without permission, touching their garb, their jewelry, their hair, you know, any of that is potentially crossing the line. Now, again, one of the things that I see a lot of people do is reach out and touch jewelry. They'll go ooh and like grab it. Now, some people that they don't care. That's fine. Other people like no, that's a huge violation of their boundaries. And so if you don't know the person, you really want to ask. You really want to check that out and go, "Oh, hey, are you okay with can I see your medallion?" Or, "Wow, can I touch that fabric?" Don't just like start rubbing people. Um, and again, certified assholes tend to do this in a way that is about pushing people down, making them feel less secure. So threats, intimidation, both verbal and nonverbal. So in the SCA, we see this as things like, "Oh yeah, why don't you put on your armor and we'll take this outside," or something like that. Or it's when I talk to my knight, or when I talk to my pelican, or you know stuff like that, where we invoke the power of the social group. So again, one of the things about the SCA that is different from the book that this group or the book that this is based on is the book makes the assumption that you're in a corporation, you're a business of some sort, and that all of these people are employees, that you could get fired, that sexual harassment laws come into play, that stuff like that. In the SCA, that's not so much the case. It's really hard to fire someone. We can R&D them. We can say you don't get to play with us anymore. But that has a pretty high threshold, usually speaking. So we can't just fire someone when they're being inappropriate. Well, it depends. So paying attention to stuff like that is important. Um, Sarcastic jokes, teasing, using that as a delivery method. Um, and this one, when I ask folks about it, lots of sort of really painfully specific things come up. So I don't actually have anything on the handout about that because I'm guessing most people can think about hurtful things, sarcastic jokes that other people have said or done. Um, and I can imagine situations where someone says or does something that they don't intend as an insult or as a to be sarcastic, but comes across that way. Um, the example that comes to mind is if we're fighting and I take your arm, so you're going to fight left-handed now, and I put my arm behind me, right? Now we generally recognize this as a point of honor, right? That I'm evening the playing field. But some people might take that as a personal insult, right? That I don't think I need my other arm to beat you. I can just beat you one-handed. Um, so sometimes people take things in ways that they're not intended. So it's important to be paying attention to that, I suppose. I tend to ramble, and audiences help me to not ramble. So I'm going to try to stay focused. Withering emails, telling lies on Facebook or through email systems, trying to control a narrative. And this is one of the things that those certified assholes do. Part of what a certified asshole is trying to do is trying to establish control. And one of the best ways to do that in a social group is to control the narrative. What is the story everyone is talking about? And what is the point of view of that story? And so if I can make the point of view of a story about how, Bob over there is always being mean to me and being a jerk, and he's, not doing X, Y, and Z, That's a lot better than Bob's story that I keep calling him names and keep undercutting his sales and driving his customers away and like so we want to pay attention to that. That's one of those bad behaviors. Status slaps intended to humiliate the victims. So one of the things that again we can do unintentionally sometimes. I remember one time we were at people were post revving at my house, and so we were in the backyard and we were playing kill the beer. So we're throwing beer cans and hitting them with swords, and it's a great time. Beer cans and bad beer spilled everywhere. Now this also meant empty beer cans strewn about my yard. And at the time I was an unbelt, and one of the knights said, "All right, we're out of beer. Squires, clean up." Now, that could easily come across as a status insult or a status slap, right? The knights don't have to go clean up. You unbelts go do that stuff. That's worthy of the lower folks, right? So sometimes peers come across that way, intentionally or not. One of the complaints I've heard from new folks is that the peers are always hanging out together and they have this clique and you can't get in. And the peers go, "That's because these are my friends and I've known them for 20 years. Like I have traveled 8 hours to see these humans." And so they're not trying to like push other people out or exclude them, but it can come across that way. Um, so again, there are ways that this can be done intentionally and ways that this is done accidentally. And we have to sort of pay attention to that. Public shaming, status degradation rituals. So one of the things I have been guilty of is shortly after I became a baron, there was this great game we'd play where I'd look at all the other barons in the group and "Your Excellency, Your Excellency, Your Excellency, Bob." And that was being a jerk. I was being a jerk. I wasn't intentionally doing it. I wasn't trying to make Bob feel bad. But by doing that, by pointing out "You're Baron and you're Baron and you're Baron and you're not," I was pushing him down. I was making him feel like he was not as good as all the other people here. So again, something I did that I really regret now, but I did it. And that is one of the games, or one of the not one of the games, one of the things about the game we play, about this social group we have. We've had a bunch of folks from the 60s who were really into like freedom and they created an organization full of hierarchy, which is so bizarre sometimes. So being a knight, I have a lot of status, I have a lot of prestige because of that accolade. Um, and I have to try to remember that that doesn't make me any better than anybody else. But there are times where I'm getting messages that no, 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 you are better. Um, so it's a challenge sometimes. So again, this could come at things from different ways. And you can probably imagine situations where people use their peerage as a lever to push people down. Rude interruptions. So interrupting someone in the middle of a class they're teaching to give a different point of view or to say the way things really are done. Um, or say that's not the way, what to interrupt folks and making it intentionally rude, it starts to push into that certified asshole stuff. Two-faced attacks. So that's being pleasant as punch around the person and seeming trustworthy. And then when you get some information, when you get stuff, using that to make the person look bad in online, in other venues, in other situations. Dirty looks, giving person dirty looks or threatening looks, Yeah, I'm not very good at those sorts of things, I don't think. Um, so again, that is one of those things that can be subject to your own experience because it's possible that, I give someone a look and they interpret it differently than I intended. Um, so that sort of thing can happen. So again, part of what makes a certified asshole certified is the targeting this, that they keep targeting a particular person or group and they are consistent in their behavior. They keep doing it. And then the last thing is treating people as if they're invisible. So ignoring someone, like if you're not at least a baron or a knight, like you don't get to come play, and again, there's different ways this shows up. I think and think about like I've heard about this thing called the Strawberry Fields at Penzic, which is a place for dukes to show up and fight each other. And it's not open really to people who aren't dukes. Now, I also don't know much about it. I've only heard rumors. I've never been there. I've never gotten kicked out because they're like, oh, you're just a knight, go away. So I don't know, but that's what I've heard. Um, and there certainly are spaces for like, no, 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 this is a meeting of the Black Griffins, or this is the meeting of the Hand of Tyr. Like, if you're not a member of that order, you can't come into these meetings because it's for members of that order. But at the same time, if I'm having a sewing circle and just having people over, and I tell Tim like, hey, you can't come over, like, no, go away, or I intentionally don't invite Tim. I let everyone else know, but since I don't want Tim there, I don't invite Tim, and I sneak around to make sure I'm not inviting Tim. That's an asshole move, and sometimes we have people in our groups that we really struggle with for any of a variety of reasons. I've heard the term goober used. Um, and sometimes groups will get into a mindset that, look, we want to have a good time. We don't want, Tim the goober to show up. So let's just like not put this out publicly, but let's plan on getting together Saturday. Like we'll just send, Facebook messages to ourselves. We won't put it on the proper Facebook group. That is treating someone as if they're invisible. So that's one of these asshole moves. So next thing, 3.15, because I really like numbers, is about what makes someone a certified asshole. So this is, a persistent pattern to have a history of episodes that end with the target feeling belittled, put down, humiliated, disrespected, oppressed, de-energized, and generally worse about themselves. Generally speaking, they know what they're doing, even if what generally speaking, they know what they are doing, even if they deny the intention. So when we talk about certified assholes, they're doing it intentionally. They know what they're doing. They're targeting someone, and that person consistently feels worse after interactions with that person. So what makes someone an ignorant asshole? So a person needs to display an inconsistent pattern. They may appear to be generally nice, however, there are attitudes, beliefs, or habits that they cause them to engage in asshole behaviors. This may be due to internalized beliefs, not knowing that something isn't as funny for others as it is for them. They don't see their behavior as harmful, and they can be really defensive when they get called on it. Because no one likes being called an asshole. No one likes being called out on their behavior. And that it's hard to sort of take that sort of stuff in. So ignorant assholes do stuff that's hurtful, and don't necessarily understand what they're doing is hurtful. Um, and you get the temporary asshole, ignorant asshole, and the certified asshole. I think there's some overlap between temporary and ignorant, right? They're I'm sure 20 years ago when I knew a great deal less than I have learned, that I said and believed and did things that were awful, that weren't good, that I am ashamed of. Um, and so I might have been an ignorant asshole back in the day. Try not to right now. I try to pay attention to what I do and what I say and not be that kind of person. It takes effort, takes practice, takes working on it. So let's talk about change the subject. Let's talk about what assholes cost our organization. Um, and generally speaking, assholes make the places they are less fun and less productive. So there's all kinds of studies about how they increase turnover, absenteeism, they decrease commitment to work, et cetera, et cetera. So since we're not talking about work environments, we're talking about the SCA. Let's focus on the SCA, how this impacts the SCA specifically. And I wonder if I can do that. I can do that. That works. Okay. So the first thing that assholes do to organizations is they lower discretionary effort. And discretionary effort in business terms is the amount of stuff that employees do that they're not paid for. So, hosting, a potluck once a month, or, all those sort of extra things that aren't part of your job, but you just do to make the place a more pleasant place to be. And I need to not touch the table because it makes the computer shake, which probably makes this a nauseating video to watch. Point taken. Okay, now here's the thing. The SCA is entirely discretionary effort. Everything we do is discretionary effort. No one does the SCA because they get paid. So things that lower discretionary effort crush our organization. Because we need people who say, you know what, I want to do this thing. I want to drive, 500 miles to go to an event. I want to, spend 50 hours, 100 hours recreating an Elizabethan costume and then wearing it out so people can see it. I want to go out onto the rapier field and take up arms and try that, or the archery field, or whatever. Everything the SCA does is discretionary effort. Assholes lower that discretionary effort. Second is fear of commitment and connection. One of the things assholes do is that you don't want to open yourself up to a group where there are assholes because you're just going to get made fun of. You're just going to get hurt. And so you don't want to open up. You don't want to expose yourself to getting impacted by these people. The SCA is a history-flavored social club. That's what we are. We are a history-flavored social club. We only get together because we like each other and we like history. That's really it. So if we start doing things that make me not wanting to connect with other people in the organization, that will kill an organization like ours, because that's what we're built on, right? Being able to find and build connections is what makes the SCA great. What keeps people involved is because they can go and find other like-minded people. And I'm just checking, see, okay, so nothing has really changed. Okay, next one, loss of creativity and innovation. In businesses, assholes tend to sort of lower the energy of everyone. So people don't try as hard because why the hell should I? I'll just have to deal with Bob eventually. While in the SCA, again, creativity, innovation, trying new things is part of what we do. Experimental archaeology. We try new things. See, okay, how does this work if I do it this way? When You don't want to risk getting criticized and getting hurt and demeaned because there's some asshole who's going to rip you a new one. We don't try new things. We don't experiment with other ideas. And that hurts us as an organization. Loss of volunteer labor. Again, we are a volunteer organization. All we rely on for everything that happens is volunteer labor. If, you know, Bob is an asshole and we don't want to be around Bob, then maybe I don't offer to help run the event. I don't offer to, take an office. I've seen that. I've seen people like, no, I'm not going to take an office in to help keep this group going because if I do, I'll have to deal with that asshole, and I don't want to deal with that asshole. So, if we don't have officers to run groups, we don't have groups. If we don't have groups, don't have much of a kingdom anymore. We lose potential members. Again, if someone shows up to a meeting and there's an asshole there who makes them miserable, who's going to want to be a part of that? And even more, even if the asshole doesn't target that person particularly, right? They're just there and they watch this asshole pick on other people and make other people miserable. They're probably apt to go, you know what? I don't want to be a part of that because that might be me someday. I might be the one getting picked on and having nasty things said to me. I don't need that. As the sign says, I don't have to take this kind of abuse from you. I have hundreds of people waiting to abuse me. Lost energy is another problem that assholes cause. Dealing with an asshole takes energy. They are energy vampires. They suck the life out of you. And if you don't have the energy for that, then you don't have the energy to do other things. And honestly, for the SCA or for people, most people, the SCA is a hobby, right? This is something we do for fun. If doing it for fun isn't fun, then you stop doing it. And again, we lose members, like everything kind of spirals down. We lose growth. There are secondary losses. I wonder how many people have heard about the SCA, have heard about some asshole, someone who just like, oh, you're going to wear those shoes and those pants? They're at least 50 years apart. Like that doesn't like and does that kind of garb snarking thing. And people hear stories about that and they're like, you know what? No. Where maybe they would have found a niche, they would have really come to enjoy being a part of our organization, and they don't even try because they've heard stories about, how awful people can be. So, how does an asshole infection start and what makes it grow? So in the book, they talk about how in America, sometimes it seems like there's this idea that winners get away with a lot. That when you're successful, you're able to bend the rules with few or no consequences. And there's some research that indicates that that's pretty well true. That when people gain power, they often ignore less powerful people. How they react to their behavior, they tend to act more rudely. They generally treat any situation or person as a means for satisfying their own needs. And so getting put into a position of power can blind us to the negative aspects of our own behavior. We just stop seeing it and start acting like jerks. So question that comes up is, well, what the hell kind of power exists in the SCA? And there's a couple different kinds of power that exist within the SCA. And the first is organizational power. There are very few people who have like actual authority within the SCA. We recognize that members of the royal family have the power to banish people, present awards. A seneschal can like kick someone out of an event for the day, but the power is really when you leave sort of the king, queen, prince, and princess gets really limited very fast. So in terms of actual power, there's not a lot. Um, Usually speaking, tradition trumps a lot of things, and that's where we get social power. Again, we are a social organization, and so that means we have to look at power in our organization through a social lens. That in terms of the organization, my being a knight gives me no more power. I don't, my vote doesn't count for more than does anyone else's. But certainly, if I speak up and say, hey, I think this is a bad idea, people are going to listen to me a lot more than they're going to listen to, Joe the new fighter, because, oh, he's a knight. So I have a lot of um, power and privilege that's been given to me because of my rank. Um, and so how we do that with peers, GOAs, um, there's a lot of flair. Um, Context is important. On the heavy field as a knight, I will carry a great deal more power than I might an A&S turn. My being a knight, like, oh, that's nice, but it doesn't maybe hold as much. The other thing that we also want to pay attention to is inspirational power, I suppose you might call it. If I grew up in the SCA and I've heard stories of Duke so and so, and like I've heard story after story about how amazing this person is. And then I meet that guy. He tells me something, I'm going to take it right to heart. He says, hey, I think you should do this. Hard for me not to do that. So that is also a thing we need to pay attention to when we're talking about social power. And now the next thing, and this is kind of funny given the world we're in at the moment, social distance and peer fear. So social distance or peer fear is the perceived or desired degree of distance between two people or groups of people. And so part of this is about things like, if I'm hanging out with my friends, most of whom are peers at this point, and it's not because like most of my friends are peers because we've been playing for about the same amount of time. And when you work hard and you're sort of in the same group, you tend to all end up at that level, right? There's a lot of distance between me and that group and possibly someone who just started, right? We don't have a lot in common. We're got all these things. And then, all the different sort of elements of rank that we can wear can help create that distance even to a greater degree. And so that's when we start talking about things like peer fear, where it's like, oh my God, I can't talk to them, they're peer. And like, one of the things we want to try to do is to keep that social distance as small as possible. In my local group, Korsvog, we have very little peer fear. And part of that is because we have a whole bunch of peers. Like when you start playing, oh, hey, I'm Toramassa, that's Rhoda over there. And then like 3 weeks later, they're like, Duke Road? You're that Duke Roader? Because they've heard stories, but now they're recognizing like, no, that's the dude. So if you are a peer, if you are someone who's got some social power, paying attention to try to lower that distance so that people don't feel like you're unavailable. And that's important for two reasons. One, it helps people feel involved. And two, when you feel closer to other people and there's less social distance, it helps rein in your own sense of power that can allow you to sort of act like a jerk. So that's something. Some of the things that we've done to sort of work with that are things like the lending peer library model on the Human Library Project. And so, they'll have an event where they'll get a bunch of peers to come to a tent, and then people can come and say, hey, I want to check out Toramassa for half an hour. And then, we'll go sit in a corner somewhere and they'll just talk to me for half an hour. Just person to person, nothing special, nothing crazy. But they'll get a chance to interact with me on a one-on-one basis and get to know who I am. I'll get to know who they are. We can talk. Um, the Black Griffins have done cornerman tournaments where a GOA member of the heavy community is in the corner of a newer fighter and coaches them, gives them advice as they're fighting in the tournament. Um, and I know other organizations have done similar things. Now, there's the Garbage Dump Troop of Monkeys. It's a group of baboons in 1978 in Kenya, and they lived near a tourist garbage dump. And so what would happen is the aggressive high status males would keep the males, the lower status males, and all the females out. So they had the run of the garbage dump and all the meat that was there, all the good food that was there. Well, sometime between 83 and 86, a bunch of infected meat got dumped there, and that killed like half the males in the troop. And as a result, the assholes died. All the asshole monkeys died. And with them gone, suddenly the ones who were on the bottom found themselves elevated to the top. And so what ended up happening is, with the assholes gone, aggression from the baboons who were suddenly on top dropped, with aggression now being something that was between baboons of similar rank, a little bit directed at low status males and none at females. And the effect lasted. In the 90s, males who had been thrust to the tops had died, but the new troop was less aggressive. So when they killed off all the assholes and the beta males, for lack of a better term, there probably is a better term, the lower status males that got raised to the top kept it that way. They didn't like the beating up the lower status folks, and so they didn't keep doing that. And that tradition continued well after they were gone. And so they were able to maintain that going forward, to the point where even if you brought in new monkeys that were used to a more aggressive and push down kind of approach, where they got brought into the new troop, they try to push down, and then the whole troop would be like, "No, dude, we don't do that here, and we're gonna kick your ass if you try." And the new monkey would be like, "Oh, never mind. I'll be nice," and they'd figure it out. So hopefully that all makes sense. And if anyone's got questions, type it in the comments because I should be able to see that. But let's go on to talk about dealing with conflict without being an asshole. So one of the things that we don't want is we don't want a group where no one is engaged in conflict. Conflict's important. Conflict is how we resolve a lot of issues. And the trick is we just have to figure out how to do that in a way that gets to results. So bad things happen when bullies win. So from the outset, when we're talking about how do we handle conflict well, from the outset, we need to disallow personal attacks, intimidation. What is my printer doing? I don't know. Disrespect from conversations. We want to use evidence. We want to approach people and problems positively. We want to use evidence and data to support our points. Oh, now it's okay. My printer is being unhelpful, or it's trying to help. It's just got lousy timing. So one of the things we want to do is we want to pay attention to swerving. And that's where groups tend to either swerve into conflict and they're just looking for fights, or they swerve away and just like, no, I don't want to talk about the problem, and they stop dealing with that. Ghost in the oh, yes, my printer, there's a ghost in the machine. 'Cause it just printed out a second copy of the handout, um, but I had tried to do that, like, an hour ago. So, okay. Um, so we want to pay attention to that swerving. Um, Groups that, we don't wanna do the smile and nod, like, we don't wanna do that, and we also don't wanna dive into conflict and, "Oh, yeah, like last time." It does happen, it does happen. And so what do we do about that? Well, one of the ideas is we wanna fight as if you're right, listen as if you are wrong. My class dealing with difficult people has lots of very specific advice about how do you engage in conflict in ethical ways and productive ways that move you towards the goal. One of the things that I find super important, and I'll just give you a quick tip: pay attention to your volume and your tempo, because one of the quickest ways to elevate a conflict into a big fight is to raise your volume. Because what happens when I raise my volume, you're gonna raise your volume even higher, and then I'm gonna raise it even, and so we get this stacking, right? And so if I just make a commitment that I'm gonna stay nice and quiet, not gonna raise my voice, I'm gonna talk in the same quiet tone, even if my opponent does that, they're not gonna go here. This is weird. And so they're gonna tend to stay at the sort of absolute distance between us. And so they might have a slightly raised voice. But if I'm talking quietly and slowly, that helps me stay in control. That helps sort of reduce the chance that they're gonna raise their voice and get out of control. Um, so now that flow was all wrong. Okay. So now, how do we deal with assholes in the wild? Um, first, the first thing we want to do when we're looking at assholes in the wild is we want to avoid the temptation to label people as certified assholes real fast. Um, we want to make sure we've got documentation. We want to make sure we've got a track record that goes, yeah, yeah, this person's a certified asshole. Because we want to be able to point to lots of different events, lots of different incidents. Um, and generally speaking, building up a trail of paperwork, of documentation. And even if that documentation is just on this day at this time, this occurred. On this date, this time, this occurred. It doesn't need to be photos, doesn't need to be video evidence, doesn't need to be anything quite so fancy. Just your recollections about your interactions with this person over a period of time is pretty good evidence. Um, One of the things I have noted in the SCA is that we do tend to accumulate alpha males. Um, we are an organization that tends to accumulate people who are very driven, focused, and incredibly skilled at things, like like crazy good at things. And that intense drive can make people come across as kind of assholes. Um, and so, we all have these sort of temporary asshole moments. And when people they're really competitive, sometimes they allow that competitive spirit to sort of push things a little harder than is proper. I We keep reminding ourselves honor over victory, which is a important thing to keep in mind. But we all know that some people sometimes, including ourselves, that drive to win, that competitiveness can push us a little further than we'd like. Um, and that's not just on the heavy field. I'm sure in lots of areas that sort of thing, that sense of competition, can become challenging. Um, so the first question that comes up is, how do you deal with ignorant assholes? Um, and generally, we have two goals when we're dealing with an ignorant asshole. The first is to increase an awareness of how they're acting, so to get them to be more aware of what they're doing. And then we want to keep ourselves and others safe while we do it. Now, one of the problems with ignorant assholes is that they often don't have a lot of insight into what they're doing. And so it can be really hard to get them to like, hey, did you know when you make jokes about ethnicity that that's racist and that offends people? Like, some people have a really hard time with that. Some people like, but that's a minority actually, right? So the first thing you want to do when you run into an ignorant asshole is to ask yourself if you have the mental energy to deal with it, because you might not, and that's okay. You might want to consider, like, if you go, you know what, I don't have the spoons for this. Find other people to talk to. This might be a situation where you go, hey, Toramassa, I got someone I got to talk to you about. It might be talking to your knight, a peer, um, someone who's respected in the group. Something like that can help. And they might have more spoons or more have an idea of what else is going on. The second thing we're doing, if you do decide to engage with an ignorant person, is you want to keep defensiveness down. And in all sort of conflict situations, but particularly in this kind of case, lowering defensiveness is super important. When people become defensive, they stop listening. And if you're trying to educate someone and they stop listening, you're not educating them anymore. You've failed. So we want to pay attention to not only their defensiveness, but our own defensiveness. Because if we get defensive, we stop listening. And if we're not listening, we're not going to accomplish anything either. One of the things that is, I think, important to recognize is everyone is the hero of their own story. So, if I've been telling jokes and not doing a great job of being a human being, and I don't recognize that, it's because no, I'm being funny. You're just being too sensitive. It's just the PC culture blah, 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 stuff, right? All that's to keep me from having to look at my own stuff and realize I might have hurt people and I might need to change and I might not be the bad guy, or I might be the bad guy, right? So sometimes what we're doing when we talk to people about this sort of stuff isn't solving the problem right then. Sometimes what we're doing is we're planting a seed. We're just saying, hey, I wanted you to know that, when you did this, that was really hurtful. And, if you want to talk about it, I'd be happy to tell you the reasons that's hurtful and, why saying gypsy isn't okay. Because they might not understand that. Or they might, who knows? But oftentimes when you're confronting these sort of people or talking to them, they're not going to go, oh, I see the light, and and that usually doesn't happen. So really what you want to focus on is planting a seed, letting them know, hey, this is a problem. And when they're like, yep, I know. I just wanted to tell you that this is not okay and this is really offensive and people are going to get hurt by it. Thought you'd want to know. And then eject out of there, get out of there. You've done your part. You want to focus on facts and feelings. When I heard you say this, which is better than when you said, because you said ends up coming across as pointy. When I heard is about what I interpreted, right? And it's harder for you to get defensive about what I heard. So we want to focus on that. I'm trying to read what else I wrote here. It'll be easy to let yourself make assertions about what the other person said. It's best to use the following expression: I heard you say, then whatever it was you heard them say, and interpret that as meaning what you think it meant. Is that what you were trying to say? And I have found that when I put things in very stark terms, people often struggle to say, yeah, I meant to say that, say this hurtful thing or this awful thing, because they don't want to. They thought I was being funny. And like, oh, I didn't take it as being funny. Um, so this helps them to clarify what they were trying to say. They might get defensive along the lines of that was what I was trying to say, and you go, I know that I know, however, that's the way it was coming across. Might want to try saying that differently. You might want to give examples. Want to pay attention to the word "I feel." Um, now, this is like a particular thing with me. I feel tends to allow thoughts to masquerade as feelings. So I feel like you're not listening to me. I'm not actually expressing an emotion. I'm expressing a thought. And usually speaking, when we're talking about emotions, I don't need to use the word feel. I can just say, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm scared, I am feeling. Instead of I feel sad, I can just say, I am sad. Um, so we want to talk about our emotional experience of whatever they're saying. Now, I was really hurt when you said this, or I was really shocked, or I was offended, or I was angry, whatever that might be. Um, and if you can do this, and I have gone into better detail, I think, in the handout. It doesn't give them much room to argue because it's your experience. And you want them to sort of understand that this is their experience. Now, when we talk about like educating an ignorant asshole, I thought about like the excuse me, in chemical dependency and chemical dependency recovery, they talk about a 5-stage model to describe how people go from being alcoholics to being sober. And the first is the pre-contemplative stage. They don't see their behavior as a problem. It's fine what I do. This isn't an issue. And the second is the contemplative. They see there's a problem, but they're not really ready to do anything about it. Like, yeah, I say things that hurt people's feelings, but I like being an asshole, or yeah, I've heard people say that. It's weird, but third step is preparation. They're not actually making any change yet, but they're like certainly not any big changes. There might be some small adjustments. They're not 100% committed to doing anything in particular, but they're thinking about it. They're getting ready to do something. Fourth step is the action stage, is actually doing something about it. And that might be reading books about it. It might be watching some videos. It might be just sort of actively paying attention to their thoughts and trying not to say the things that they have been saying out of habit. And then the last stage is maintenance, which is keeping it up. So that's one of the stages here. And this is where there's a risk of relapse, that they're going to fall back into old patterns or back into old habits. So the next idea, dealing with assholes, is the kayak analogy. And the idea is that if you're in a kayak and you're going down a river, if you get dumped out of your boat, what they tell you is don't try to get right back in your boat when you're going down the river and you're in the rapids, right? What you do is you orientate yourself with your feet pointing downstream. You're going to trust your life jacket to keep you afloat. And as you come up to rocks, you're going to use your feet and your legs to sort of absorb the energy and slide off the rock and move around it. And you're going to wait till you get to a calmer part of the river before you try to swim out. When we find ourselves in a situation where we're, the group has a real bad case of asshole poisoning, what you're going to do is you're going to trust in your social supports, the people that you love and trust and that are close to you. That's your life jacket. They're going to keep you afloat. And we're going to do our best to sort of absorb, to reframe. We're going to look for small wins, to try to negate as much damage as possible that these people do. We're going to try not to blame ourselves for things. One of the strategic goals of bullies is to get you to doubt yourself, to make you not trust your own thoughts or feelings. Because If I can get space in your head rent free, I'm going to take that every time. So you want to evict those people. You want to pay attention to irrational thoughts such as this is never going to end. I'm never going to get over this. Everyone hates me. Because that none of that's ever likely true, right? It seems terrible. Um, there's another idea called the Disney strategy. And so the Disney strategy, Disneyland gets a lot of people and they get a fair number of assholes, right? But their strategy, what they teach cast members at Disney, um, is to imagine what must have happened to get the guest to get this guest that angry at the most magical place on earth. Kids being sick, crying, overloaded, long drives, bad traffic, humidity, dehydration. And so what they're doing is they're trying to imagine a situation or scenario that would make this person act like the asshole they're being right at that moment, right? And to sort of go, okay, so I'm going to, and essentially what they're doing is they're teaching the person to imagine this person is a temporary asshole and not a certified asshole. So reminding yourself, like, they must be having a real hard time, flying monkeys came and took away all their stuff, like, or whatever's going on. Um, Disney also encourages its castmates to just keep smiling and to imagine the people as VIPs, trying to focus on those friendly interactions. One of the other things we can do is to practice indifference and emotional detachment. Part of what assholes and bullies are looking to do is they're looking to manipulate our feelings, to manipulate our the connection and our desire for connection. And if you can go, you know what, I don't care what you think, man. Like, you don't matter. If we can do that and really mean it, that helps us create distance. In my profession as a therapist, one of the things that I have learned to do is to develop detached concern. And what that means is that, when you're in the office with me, I do worry about you. I am concerned about your well being. And when you leave the office, I am not. Um, Now, it's not that I'm, faking it or that I'm being a jerk about it. Um, it's hard to explain sometimes. Part of it has to do with, like, I worry about people because when I'm in session with them, I want to be helping them figure out how to solve their problems. So worrying is part of the way I am present for them in that moment. The other part of it is that when they go to leave my office, they are in charge of their life. Like, I'm a consultant. They have hired me to help give them advice to make their life look better. I have given them the best advice I can. I don't do implementation. I'm a good consultant. I give you advice. I don't make stuff happen. So we want to focus on things like gentle redirection, small wins, trying to find small wins when we're dealing with assholes. Um, One of the things I like doing is sort of just making observations about what's going on. So, if someone is raising their voice and they're pointing at me, I'm like, it seems to me like you are shouting. Is that what you are trying to do? Or, what you said seemed hurtful to me. Were you trying to hurt my feelings? And when you say it like just like that, like out loud, what the person's doing, most people have like, no, I wasn't trying to do that. Okay, well, that sure seemed like it. So maybe you want to do that differently. It's hard for people to sort of say, yes, I'm trying to be hurtful because people don't want to be hurtful. Um, De-escalation and re-education are lower risk strategies for dealing with assholes when we're sort of in that surrounded by assholes kind of place. There's a lot of good stuff in my dealing with difficult people class, which was last week. Um, so look through that. Um, So, what would we do if we find ourselves in a swarm of assholes? When we're surrounded by lots of jerks, how do we try to stay kind? How do we keep our head in the emotional and moral place where we want to be? One of the things that can happen in the SCA in particular is we can start seeing the other people playing the game as rivals and as enemies. And when we start doing that and seeing them as opponents rather than friends, it moves us into a confrontational or conflictual place. And it makes it easier to be an asshole, to be a jerk, to be insensitive. Um, Ideally, in the SCA, in my opinion, competition helps us grow both individually and as a group. That when you look at where the SCA is now compared to when we started, on almost any front or any area, look at the armor, look at the clothing, look at the materials that people are producing, the scrolls, almost anything, right? The stuff we're putting out now is so much better than the stuff that they were putting out 50 years ago. That's because that competition, everyone's working to get a little bit better, to do it a little bit better. Excuse me. So working to do that, we want to pay attention to our language, especially when we're in these sort of swarms of assholes. We want to focus on more inclusive language. We need to think a better idea, and you want language that pulls people together, as opposed to "I want you" or "you need to," because that ends up being very pointy, and that's going to put people on the defensive. Um, One of the important things when we're dealing with assholes is it's easier to resist at the beginning than at the end. When someone comes in and starts being a jerk and trying to control things and being a bully, you need to put a stop to that right away. You can't let that sit. You can't let it go. Because when you do, it grows. And it gets harder to stop the longer it goes on. It's a lot easier to deal with it if you deal with it right away. Um, we want to be aware of emotional contagion. And emotional contagion is the idea that and I'm doing it again, I'm touching the table. Emotional contagion is the idea that when I start feeling a particular way, other people pick up on that feeling and start feeling it too. Now, I'm going to strongly resist the urge to geek at you about mirror neurons and the neurology of emotional contagion, but it's a real thing that scientists with much more brains than I have studied. And I don't mean they're smarter than me. I mean they literally have more brains. They have jars and jars of them. I'm getting weird. I'm tired. Emotions are catchy for good and bad, right? So if you can keep yourself calm, keep yourself focused, it's going to be easier to keep the group in a positive direction where you can deal with some confrontation without swerving into avoiding conflict entirely or diving into just fighting for the sake of fighting. Remember, worst comes to worst, you can always walk out. The SCA is a game. You are under no obligation to participate. Um, so you can do that. You are an adult. You can get up and go do something else that you would like more. And whether that means that you don't play in your local group, that you play at a larger level, or it means you go do something else. Like, I will miss you, but I understand. We also want to pay attention to thoughts like whoever dies with the most toys wins, the more philosophy. Constant improvement is fine. but you want to pay attention to sort of that status difference. When you start thinking of yourself as better than someone else, that is where you start getting into dangerous territory where you're going to start making decisions and saying and doing things that you maybe don't want to be doing and you don't like about yourself. So, the no asshole rule in the SCA, how do we implement it? So there were a number of steps that the book suggests, most of which I think work quite well for the SCA. The first is say the rule, write it down, act on it. Now we have in the SCA the anti-bullying policy, which is good. I have expressed concerns that like it's not super clear what you're supposed to do. Like we've got to don't bully people. You know, as a seneschal, when someone said, "Hey, I'm being bullied," I didn't have a like, "Here's what to do next" part of a handout. But saying, we are not going to tolerate, we're not going to cultivate assholes. That here in insert your shire name, we focus on not just on learning history, but also becoming more chivalrous, just, and kind versions of ourselves. So instead of saying no assholes, we can say, here's what we want more of. We want to be kinder. We want to be more chivalrous. We want to be gentler and more noble people. And that's part of what our organization is building towards. Pay attention that assholes attract other assholes. And sometimes they bring in assholes from the outside. Sometimes they just help people turn into assholes. Ideally, we want to get rid of assholes fast. Now, again, the book says you just fire them, which when you're a company and you have assholes, you can fire them. We can't do that. So part of what we want to do is focus on documentation. Document. When you've got someone who's being an asshole, you need to document what's going on. You need to be talking to the local seneschal. You need to talk to the regional. You need to be talking to kingdom. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to deal with it. Keep track of incidents. Remember what's going on. Connect with your friends and other people in the SCA to pay attention to that. One of the things that I think is important, especially if you are a member of the royal family, or you're a peer, or in a GOA organization or a GOA group that does voting, is that you want to treat assholes as incompetent. That if you are an asshole, you, by definition, by how I would define it at least, are lacking peer-like qualities. And so if someone's an asshole, I don't care how good you are with a sword, it is completely immaterial. If you're an asshole with a sword, you're just an asshole. You're not a knight, and you're never going to be a knight if you're an asshole. We need to not elevate people who are assholes. We need to remember that as people who do have power, that power breeds nastiness. One of the things that I do, if you meet me at an event and have me introduce myself to someone new, I will not say, "Hi, I'm Sir Toramassa." I'll say, "Hi, I'm Toramassa." I intentionally want to try to keep that social distance low when I'm meeting people, because I don't want them to feel like I'm somehow extraordinary or special, or someone that they can't connect with. Now, some of you may be going, "John, you're wearing your knight's chain, and you're always wearing a knight's chain, like all of the time, every time you go out." And I do. And the thing is, I'm not wearing it for you guys. I'm wearing it for me, because it reminds me of what I have sworn to do. It reminds me of my oath and how I wish to be. And so it's more to remind me, every time I wash my hands, which has been a lot, every time I look in the mirror, it reminds me of who I'm trying to be, that better, kinder, gentler version of myself. One of the next ones that I think is important to talk about is to manage moments. So one of the things that happens is people will say things in a, "Oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah," and, like, they'll just throw out this awful thing, and everyone around will kinda go, but they won't actually say anything. They won't actually do anything about it, and that moment just slides on past, and that's hard because the option to say, "Hey, Bob, that was really awful," or "That was shitty," or "What do you mean by that?" I mean, one of the ways you can kinda confront that sort of behavior is to just be ignorant, to ask a question like, "What do you mean rapier fighters aren't real fighters? I'm not sure I understand what you mean." "Well, you know." "No, Bob, I don't know what you mean by that. Explain it to me. Explain to me how rapier fighters aren't real fighters." And make them explain it. This is a classic strategy that, is often taught in for males on how to pull apart, misogyny or racial comments, is just play dumb and make the person explain the joke. Because when you explain the joke, it's not funny anymore. Um, you wanna teach and model constructive confrontation. That's part of the reason I've been teaching these classes, why I try to do all this stuff, because I think this is important. And I want people to understand and learn it and use it. And we want to link big policies to small decencies. Um, Organizations that create big policies and plans will make their workplaces asshole free. These big things are fine as they go. I'm not even sure what that's. Be nice to people. Try to be really nice. I'm not quite sure how to say that in a better way. Um, so the last thing, and this is kind of a bonus idea, is that gentle teaching and pressure is really how we get people to change. So those ignorant assholes, those people who maybe tend to be a temporary asshole more often than we'd like, it's that gentle social pressure that just kind of gently pushes, like, "Hey, you can do better than that." Like, yeah, I know you're having a hard time right now, but that wasn't super cool what you did. I mean, what you did on the rapier field, that was fantastic. You were great there. But you know what you did just a little bit ago? That was not so fantastic. It's exactly the same approach that we use when we talk to people about their garb, right? We don't go to a new person and go, "What the heck?" No, we go, "Hey, that's fantastic. How'd you choose that fabric?" And then we'll maybe offer some ideas about, "Hey, maybe this would be something you want to look at next," or, "Hey, if you want to make some more stuff, contact me. I got some great ideas on some Byzantine that would look really fantastic on you." Right? And we help them grow. And we don't do it all at once and we don't shame them into it. We just help them see how doing it differently is better. And we support them in that growth. Um, and that's actually the last of my prepared comments. So at the end of the handout, there is a test that you can take. That's I don't even know 20, 30 questions, true, false, that help you sort of figure out if you're a certified asshole or not. So, anyone watching have any questions, any comments, things that I didn't address that you'd like to hear addressed or talk about? Give me a shout. Let me know. Going once, going twice. Well, I hope this has been useful. This has been an odd experience for me, but I'm starting to get a little more comfortable with it. Um, so next week about the same time, I'm going to do hopefully a question and answer on the dealing with difficult people. If it would be preferred, I could do it on YouTube or not YouTube, Facebook Live. Some people seem to be doing better at that. Um, so let me know. But thanks very much, everyone. I'll talk to you guys later.